Hi and welcome to challenge number 10, longest word. The statement for the challenge reads that we need to find the longest word or words in a string. So if we have a string like this, there are going to be three different characters that have 5 letters, which is the maximum number of characters for any of these long words. Now, the reason that the output reads 3 different words is because you need to program that as well. So if there is just one word that has the maximum number of characters, making it a long word or the longest word, or there are several words that you need to take a look at and they have the same number of characters, which is higher than the other words, you need to print that as well. So if there is one or more, you need to print all of them. And as I'm going over the solution, you're going to understand how to implement this. So the first language that we're going to try to attempt this is going to be JavaScript. And in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function. I'm going to call it find longest words or word, whatever. Now, this function is going to receive an input, and that input is going to be the string that we're going to check to find the longest words. I'm just going to call that stir because we are going to change that. Now, what we need to do is we need to also handle if there are spaces before the start of the basically at the start of the string or at the end of the string. And then we need to also come up how to find a word. Now, what makes a word is the space that comes after it. So this is a word because there is a space after it. Quick is a word because there is a space after it. So what we need to do is we need to first identify what the words are, and then we can see, okay, which one has the highest length. So I'm going to grab my stir and I'm going to split this at the white space or at the empty space. Now, the split method, it could accept a regular expression, and that's exactly what I'm going to pass to it. So we're going to have an occurrence of a space. Let me just zoom this in. But this occurrence, it could be one time or it could be more than one time. That's why I'm just going to add a plus there. Now, what the split gives us is going to be an array. So we can easily call the filter method on it. Now, what do I want to filter? Because after I've removed all of the spaces, is there any character left? Because sometimes you might receive an empty string, or you might receive a string that has just 10 spaces, but there are no letters, there are no words inside of there. So this is one edge case that we need to handle. So here I'm going to say word. I just want to grab the words whose length is higher than 0. So if any word has a length that is higher than 0, at this point that we have removed all of the white spaces or all of the spaces, that means there are actually characters in there. And then I'm going to store this inside of a variable called words. And this words is going to be an array for us. Now, let me just collapse the sidebar. There we go. So we have a little bit more real estate. Now, what I can do is I can print this out, or I could just move forward. But I want to print this out because I want to show you how this process moves forward. So we have this words array, and this is going to be all of these individual words of our string as array items. And I'm just going to pass in this words here. And let's save this. Let's go log this. So console.log. Now for the input or for the input as well as the output, I'm just going to style them a little bit. So the input is going to look like this. We're going to grab our template literal as well. And I'm going to pass in here an input. And then I'm going to also pass in here an output, which we are yet to create. So output. So what is the input? Well, the input is the actual string. So I'm going to say input, and we have this string already here. So this one. Let me just copy that, put it right here. So this is the input, but what about the output? const output. This is going to be find longest word, and then we're going to pass in the input. Now, what we could do is we could run this. Let me just zoom it out a little bit. Note a, we should first cd 2010, and then note a tab. Let's run it. So you can see at this point, the words array is actually right here. And now that we have found this out, let's move forward with our solution. I'm going to keep the console log in there just for your reference. Now, what if the user, what if any user passes an empty string? Now, in that scenario, I'm going to say if words.length is equal to 0, then I just want to return a message. I'm going to say input cannot be empty. Now, what do I mean by this? So let me just comment out the input. I'm going to create another one. Let's say the user passes something like this. Now, in this scenario, when we split this, add the white space and get rid of all of the white spaces, there is no character in there. So essentially, we end up with an empty string. And what happens in that scenario is we're going to say, okay, the input is just several spaces, but the output is going to say input cannot be empty. So you need to provide something in there. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to find the maximum length for any specific word. So we have this math module in JavaScript, and it has a max method on it. And the max method is just going to return, as it says, the larger of a set of supplied numeric expressions. So what I'm going to do is we have this array. I'm going to spread this words array in here. And then since this is an array, I can do the map method on it. And I could take a look at the length for every individual word. And why do I want to do this? That's because this is going to be the argument that we pass to the max method. So word.length. And then I'm going to store this inside of a variable, and we could call it max length. So this is going to give us const the word with the maximum length. So max length is going to give us the word that has the maximum length. And we could log this as well. Let me just put it there. And this is going to be word or just max length. And let me just call this max length. Let's save this. Let's run it. And okay, let me just put the other input in. Let's save that. Let's run this again. And there we go. So the word that has the maximum length is 5. Now, after we have found out what the word is, what the maximum length for our specific word is, we are going to filter our array of words based on this maximum length. Now, the reason that I'm showing you these different steps when it comes to console log is for the sake of TypeScript. Because when we get to TypeScript, which is our next language, we're going to jump into too much detail. And we're going to try to implement most of these higher order methods. We're going to implement them manually. And that's going to be a little bit tricky to understand in comparison to our previous challenges. So I just want to go a little bit slow so you can really understand how all of this works, or all of this work. So here, what I'm going to do is I have a maximum length, which could be anything depending on the string. Here, the maximum length is 5. I'm going to grab my words array, and I'm going to filter all of the words based on that maximum length. So I'm going to say word.length, just give me all of the words whose length is equal to the maximum length. Now, what this is going to do is this is going to give us not only one word or 2 or 3, depending on the string, however many words there are that have the maximum length, it's going to filter it out and it's going to give it to us. Because the filter method basically produces a new array based on the condition based on this condition when this is true. So after this, I could just go ahead and store that new array. I'm going to say const longest words. It could be just a long word or just longest words. I'm just going to say longest words. Now in here, let's just do another log console.log, and I'm going to say all long words. And this is going to be our longest words. Let's save this and let's run it again. And now you can see we have our words array, we have the maximum length, and now we have our all long words, which is quick, brown, and jumps. Now, the problem with this is our output is still undefined. We're going to get to that. Now, the problem with this is sometimes there is repetitive words inside of our input string. So if I had like another quick, then I would have two quicks, which are still long words, but then there is repetition or redundancy. Now, how am I going to actually solve the problem of redundancy? What I'm going to do in here is I am going to use another data structure of JavaScript, which is called a set. So a set data structure, we use it for something like this. Now, we're going to use set just to make sure that there are no repetitive entries inside of our set. Now, a set is going to be the kind of data structure that does not allow duplicates inside of it, as opposed to basically a simple array. So if I were to change this input to, let's say, something else like bird, and bird, you can see I have a string that is repetitive in nature, right? And now if I were to run this again, we would see that our longest words, they're going to be bird, bird, bird. But then we just want to get one of these. We don't want to duplicate our answer. And a set is extremely useful here because it is going to remove duplicates by default, because sets, they do not contain any duplicates. So it's just going to remove it for us. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically do some things, and I'm going to explain all of that. Now, to be able to create a set, we're going to do new set. And in here, I'm going to pass in all of our long words, or basically the longest words array. And then what I'm going to do is, since we need to convert this back into an array, and then we're going to convert it back to a string because the output is going to be a string, I am going to spread this set. So I have all the individual items from the set, and I'm going to wrap this with the syntax of an array. And this is going to give us an array. But nonetheless, I'm going to show you how a set looks like as well. So this is going to be unique longest words, but there is not going to be any duplicates in this one. Now let's log this as well. So console.log, and in here I'm going to add a comment. I'm going to say set itself. So let's take a look at what the set is. I'm just going to provide a little bit of styling here, and there is 3 there, just a comma there, and in here we have our set. So I'm going to have new set, and let's pass in the longest words so you can see what the set actually is. So I'm just logging that. And then we're also going to log the unique longest words. So unique longest words. I'm going to say set converted into an array. And now you can see why I'm going step by step, because this is really interesting to look at. So we had our set itself right here. So this is the syntax for a set. It looks like an array, but the difference is that it has like these curly braces. And then we have the set that specifies how many items there are. So you can see it says set itself, and then we have a set that has just one item. What happened to the rest of 2? Well, it doesn't add any duplicates, so it removes all of the duplicates by default. So we end up with this, and now set converted into an array is this bird. So we just have one thing. So the input was triple birds, but the output is going to be just one bird. And now how do we get the output? Well, we just have to convert this unique longest words into a string, and that's going to be our output. And how do we do that? Well, that's something that we're going to return from this function. So I'm going to say unique longest words. And as soon as I call the join method, this is going to convert it into a string. But then it requires some sort of a delimiter at which it's gonna basically combine the different array items into a string. And I'm gonna pass in a comma and a space. So now let's take a look at, let me just get rid of all of the logs that we have. And there we go, save it. And I'm gonna clean up our terminal. Let's run this again. So we had the input, which was bird, 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 and the output is just one of them. I am going to just call this again. Let's take a look at it. There we go. Let's take a look at our empty spaces. And input cannot be empty. I do have a couple more test cases, a few more, which I am going to add right here. And then there is this one as well, just a variable number of characters. So let's go one by one. We have this hello world JavaScript. So JavaScript is going to be the word with the maximum characters or the longest one. We could test this one as well. And then we have triple D. Very good. So what about this one? So we can see at the start of the string, we have an unusual number of spaces. And then these spaces among these letters, these words, that's unusual as well. And then we have a number here. But keep in mind, the output is always going to be a string. So even though it seems like this number it has the longest, it is the longest, but it's going to still be a string. So let's save that. Let's run this again. And there we go. We got 1 up to 9. Now, what if you pass in an empty string? Now, an empty string is going to be the same thing. It's going to be the length is 0. So we're going to print that message that the input cannot be empty. There we go. And with this, the JavaScript solution has come to an end. Let's jump in and let's actually solve this for TypeScript. So I'm going to open up the TypeScript file. So let's just jump in and let's see how we're going to solve this for TypeScript. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to define our function, which is going to be longest word. Now, the type of our input is going to be string, and what this function is going to produce will also be a string. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is split our string at the empty space, and we're going to then get rid of all of the empty spaces. So we have this string. On the string, we could call the split method, and this is going to go exactly like the way we did it for JavaScript. We're going to have one or more occurrences of a white space, and this is going to give us an array. And we're going to store this array into this words array, which is going to have a type of an array string. Now, this is going to be one of the higher order methods that I'm going to use, but I'm going to try to make this as manual as possible. Now, I wanted to make the split manual, but then it got really, really complicated for this one specific challenge. And I was like, it's not necessary to do it like that. Now, this is going to be our words array, but the way I'm going to go about this is going to be, let's just call it splitted words, but I want to work with my words array here. So my words array is going to be an array of strings, but then I'm going to initialize it to an empty string because I am going to populate it right now. Now that we have splitted our string into the splitted words, and we have initialized an empty words array, which is just going to have all of our strings. So here, since this is going to go manual, we're going to use a for loop. I'm going to say for let I. Now, this is just going to be our iteration count. The iteration count is going to start from 0 because indices in arrays, they are 0 based. So the iteration is going to end 1 less than our splitted words array. There we go. Because indices are one number behind the length of the actual arrays. Because the length starts from 1, but indices, they start from 0. So you're always going to see this I less than the length. And that's the ideology behind it. And I've talked about this in my previous challenges as well. So I feel if you followed all of these, I feel like I'm a little bit repeating myself. So here, what is it that I want to do? Well, I want to populate my words array with any characters from my input string that have more than one letter or one character, or they have more than one length that I want to populate them. So I'm in here, I'm going to say if, let's grab our splitted words, and I'm going to pass in the I, which is our loop agent. So it's going to select one item from the split words array, and it is going to take a look at the length of that. So if the length is more than 0, that means that it is not a white space. Then we're going to grab our words array and we're going to push this specific item in there. There we go. And this is going to populate it for us. Now we need to do our check. So if words.length is equal to 0, that means the user has passed either an empty string or a number of spaces. We're just going to say input cannot be empty. And there we go. So we can just log our result at this point. We can say words, this is going to be words array, and I'm just going to pass in words there. So this function, it requires us to return a string. So I'm just going to return a string, and then let me just jump into my JavaScript file and let's just grab all of this and let's put it inside of here. And then we're going to get rid of the empty space. We're just going to pass in the first input. So let's run this. We have TSC B tab, hit enter. So TSC B tab, this should be TS. There we go. We just compile that, and now let's run it. There we go. So we have our words array, which is the same thing that we had in JavaScript. And then this is our input string, and the output is something that we just passed in just to satisfy this function. Now, the next step that we did in JavaScript was to find out what is the maximum length for any specific word. So we take a look at all of our words, and we want to find out what is the word that has the maximum length. And then depending on that length, we're going to extract it from our words array. So I am going to define a variable, and I'm going to call it max length. Now this is a variable whose type is going to be a number, and I'm going to initialize it to 0. So at the start of this operation, I assume that there is nothing in there, but there was no words, there was no string, there was nothing. But then as we are iterating over our array of words, we're going to find out, we're going to take a look at every individual item. So we're going to take a look at the, quick, brown, fox, individually. And we're going to, every time we're going to update or basically overwrite the value of this max length. So it's going to start at 0. When we take a look at the, max length is going to be 3. The value is going to change or update from 0 to 3. But then once we get to quick, max length is going to update from 3 to 5. And it's going to stay at 5. Brown is going to be 5. Fox is going to be 3. But max length is not going to update to 3 because it just goes up. It doesn't go down. And for jumps, it's still going to be 5 over for the 3, lazy 4, and then dog 3. So it's always going to stay at 5 depending on the string. Now let's go ahead and let's implement this. Of course, we're going to have our for loop. Let I, the number of iterations that we want is going to be, of course, the length of the array. But since the index starts from 0, the length of the array is going to be 1 less for us. So length right there. And then we need to increment so we can go to the next iteration of the loop. Now, what do we want to do in here? We are going to select all of the words. So let's pass in our agent. Now, what we did here is this I is going to jump into this words array and it's going to select one item starting with the first one in each iteration. And then it's going to go to the next, and then it's going to go to the next. So once it selects the first item, which is there, we're going to take a look at its length. And then if that length is higher than our max length, the previous value of the max length, then we are going to add it. We're going to update the value of max length. So initially, what is the value of max length? It is 0. Once the loop agent jumps into the words array and it selects the first word, which is the. What is the length of the? It's 3. Is 3 higher than 0? Yes. So this condition holds true. And once this condition holds true, we're going to grab our max length and we're going to set it equal to that specific word's length. In this scenario, max length is going to be updated to 3. In the next iteration, we take a look. I is going to be 1, and that's going to select quick. And the length of quick is 5. Is 5 more than the current value of max length, which is 3? Yes. So the condition holds true. We update the value of max length to 5. But that's going to be the last update, because no other word, as we can see right here, in this string has a higher number of characters. Right? And that's it. That's how you do it manually. So here I could just show it to you. So log, this is going to be max length, and let's pass in max length. Let's run this and then run this, and there we go. So the highest number of characters for the longest word is going to be 5. And then we select this 5 and we basically filter out all of the words that have this many number of characters in there. Okay, there we go. So this console log is done. Let me just comment out the console logs. It's just getting too crowded. So let's filter out all of the words that have a max length. And the the operation is going to go almost the same way. We specify an array, but we're going to use our let keyword because this array is going to change. Longest words. This is going to have a type of an array of string. Initially, this is going to be an empty array. We are going to iterate over our words array. So I'm going to say I starts from 0, and then I is going to go as long as there are items within the words array, and then we need to iterate I. We need to increment I to go to the next iteration. Now, what words do we want to select from our words array and put inside the longest words array, which is at this point empty? What words do we want to select and move them or copy them to our longest words? Well, we only want to select the words that have this maximum length. So we need to compare them somehow. So that's going to be a conditional. So we're going to say any word inside of this array whose length is exactly as the max length. Just grab my longest words and push it into that array. Push what into that array? Push that specific word. So max length is 5. The is 3, so it doesn't push it. Quick is 5. Quick has 5 characters. So this condition holds true. And then we push it inside of this longest words array. But what about brown? Brown is 5, so we push that in there as well. What about fox? No. Jumps, yes. Over the lazy dog, none of them. We push none of them in there. And this should be a semicolon, and there we go. And now after this, if I were to log this, I could call this all longest word or words, and then let's pass in the longest words array. Let's run this. I need to update our file and then run it. And there we go. So we got quick, brown, and jumps. And now keep in mind, there could be some repetitions, some duplicates in here. For example, let's grab our bird, and let's run it. And there we go. So you can see the all longest words array, it has all three of them. Now, this is going to be the trickiest part of this entire challenge. How to do a set without actually writing a set. So what I want to do is basically, I don't want to use a set data structure that we used in the JavaScript part. I could very well just pass in longest words exactly as I did it in JavaScript. But then I wanted, I know that I can do it, so I want to try to do it manually and before instead of actually creating a set. So what is it that I want to do? Well, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create an array, and I'm going to call it unique longest words. You can see these names are similar to their JavaScript counterparts. This is going to be an empty array, because why is this an array? And it is still an array. We keep working with arrays because it's very easy. They have this for loop, and we can basically do anything we want with them. And then we can just convert them into string whenever we want to. So here I have this unique longest words, and I want to populate this with only the unique words who share a maximum length. In the case of the first input, the quick brown fox, it's quick, brown, and jumps. In the case of bird, triple birds, it's just going to be one of them. So I need to keep that in mind. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go step by step, and I'm going to explain all of this. Let's grab our iteration count. The iteration count is going to start from 0. It's going to go through the entire length of our longest words. Keep that in mind. Now, at this point, we don't care what happens within our words array because we filtered out all of the long words. But now we want to take a look at which of these long words is a duplicate. So we get rid of it and we just keep the unique ones. And we put all of the unique ones inside of our unique longest words array. So we just want to get rid of all of the duplicates. Now here, let me just select the longest words array. We're going to iterate over the length of this. So however many items are in there. Now, I'm going to specify a flag, and then we're going to turn this flag on and turn it off, depending on if we find a duplicate. So if we find a duplicate, we're going to turn this on, but initially, this is going to be set to false. And I'm going to type annotate it, not because it needs to be type annotated, just for better understanding and for simplicity. So is duplicate is by default false, because why is it by default false? It's because the first word that we take a look at that, there is no word before it. All the words, they come after it. So in the very first iteration, when I is equal to 0, we don't have any duplicates. Duplicates only happen if we take a look at the second word, and so on and so forth. So in the first iteration, there is no duplicate because we just looked at the first word. And once we have more than that, then there is chances of having or ending up with a duplicate. So if this input triple bird, it was just one bird, we wouldn't have any duplicates, right? So how can I check if I have a duplicate? Now I am going to iterate over my unique longest words array as well. So this is going to be a nested loop, and I'm going to say for let j starts from 0. Now, why am I iterating over the unique longest words? Because in the first iteration, I have, let's say, this bird. Let's talk about this. Is this a unique word? Yes, this is unique. There is no bird before it. So the first one right here. So I put it inside of my unique longest words. And in the second iteration, when I take a look at the second bird, I have this bird already inside of the unique longest words. But how do I know if I have it inside of this unique array? Well, I need to iterate over the unique array as well, so I know what's inside of the unique array. That's why we need to iterate, just so we know what's inside of that. Dot length. J++. Now, here, what we are going to do is we're going to check, once we iterate over our unique longest words array, we need to check whether that word that we want to put in has already been added in there. So how do we do that? That's going to be an if statement, all right? So we're going to say the word, longest word, at any specific index, if that's the same thing as our unique longest words at that specific index, then that means it's a duplicate. So we're going to grab our is duplicate and we're going to set it to true, and we're going to break out of our loop. But what if it's not a duplicate? What if we iterate over our second loop and this condition does not hold true? So we don't run anything. We just break out of this. We just go outside of this for loop and right here. But keep in mind, we're still within the big loop, which is the longest words array. And in here, we're going to do another statement. We're going to say if is duplicate is false, then let's grab our unique longest words and let's add that word, because it's not a duplicate. If it is not a duplicate, let's put it inside of the unique array because it's a unique item. And which item is it that you want to put? Well, that depends on the iteration of our loop agent, the main one, which is I. So let's save all of that and let's go over this one more time. So what is happening here? The first thing that is happening is we are iterating over our longest words. Why? Because we have already filtered out all of the words that have the maximum length. Initially, there is not going to be any duplicate because in the first iteration, we take a look at the first word. So here, I'm going to comment out the bird. I'm going to comment in the quick brown fox. That's better to understand. So in the first iteration, we take a look at the, right? And this Boolean is false. All right, Boolean is false. And then I have this for loop. The for loop has an if statement. It says if the longest word, if the first longest word is equal to the first longest unique word. So is the equal to the empty, an empty array? No, it's not. Why is this an empty array in the first iteration? Because we have not pushed anything in there. You can see it's an empty array. So these two are not equal because this is basically, you could say it returns undefined because there is nothing inside of the array. So when this j goes inside of this unique array, there is undefined, and undefined is not equal to the. So we do not go into this if statement, we come to this if statement. And we can see that is duplicate is set to false. So when duplicate is set to false, we run this line, which is line 45. We grab our unique array and we push the in there. So now this unique array has the first item, which is, well, it's not the, because when we talk about our longest words, the longest words are quick, brown, and jumps. I just noticed that. So it's just going to be quick, brown, and jumps. So it takes a look at quick. There is no other quick, and it puts quick inside of this, using this push inside of this unique array. Now, what happens in the second iteration? In the second iteration, I is equal to 1. This Boolean flag is still set to false, right? And this j is going to be 1 as well. So we're going to take a look at this first one, all right? So when this is 1, we take a look at brown and we say, okay, is brown already inside of this array? No, it's not. Inside of the unique array, we just have quick. We don't have brown. Well, you need to keep this in mind as well, that for every time this outer loop iterates, this inner loop iterates completely. This one. It goes through all of the iterations for every time I iterates. So if I is 0 and j had, let's say, 10 iterations, j would go through all of its 10 iterations. I'm just simplifying how this loop works so it's easier to understand. So it's not the same thing, so this if statement does not run and the flag remains false. And when it is false, we put brown inside of the unique array as well. And we do the same thing for jumps, and we put jumps in there. So all of this unique longest words, they're going to be quick, brown, and jumps. And then the only thing we need to do is we need to convert it into a string. And how do we do that? Well, we could go the easy way, which is just use the join method. But knowing me, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to say let result, this is going to be of type string. Let's set it to an empty string. And then I'm going to iterate over my unique words. Keep in mind, I am successively moving away from the arrays. So for my unique longest words, I'm going to say for let I, the iteration count start from 0. It goes as long as the length of this array. And then I increment this by 1 after each iteration as well. Now I'm going to say if, in here, I'm going to say if the index is equal to 0, that means we are at the first iteration. That's the first iteration. If the index is 0, then just put the word, the first item of the array, as the first word inside of our string. And how do we do that? We basically update our result. So we're going to say result is going to be, now result is an empty string at the beginning of this operation, right? But in the first iteration, we're going to signify the first iteration for a specific reason, and I'm going to come back to it. So we're going to grab our result and we're going to update it with that very first word. So we know that our array contains quick, brown, and jumps, right? And in the first iteration, I is 0. So we jump inside of this if statement and we update the result with this unique longest words, which is this quick. So inside of the if statement, result has been updated to a value of quick. And now result has this quick inside of it. But then I'm going to add an else clause here as well. So when we go to the next iteration, I is no longer 0, I is 1. So we jump into the else statement because if statement doesn't hold true. Once we jump to the else statement, we already have something inside of our string. And whatever that is, we're going to put it right here. And then we are going to add on to it a comma and a space. And then we're going to add on to it the rest of the letters using. And why did we separate the first iteration? That's because the first iteration doesn't have any commas, any spaces before it. But there is always going to be a comma and a space after it, after the next words. All right? And that's it. This is how you populate this one. So this is basically how the join method would work underneath, right? So you have an array, you want to convert it into a string, and you don't want to use the join method. This is how you do it. And now, what do we want to return? Remember, we want to return a string. And this result is actually our string. It contains all of the unique words that we want to return. And that's it. That's it for the TypeScript solution. Let's check it out as well. So let's run Node. And there we go. We got the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. We have quick, brown, and jumps. We could take a look at other ones as well. Let's convert this to type. Save that. And there we go. We got TypeScript. So what about this triple bird? Let's see if this logic works as well. There we go. We just got one of them. And for this one, we know it is going to exist. It's going to work. But what about this? All of these spaces. and let's run it. And there we go. That works for that one as well. So we should be able to see our our message for an empty string. Input cannot be empty. So it wouldn't matter if it is no spaces or if there is like a bunch of spaces, we should still see the same message. And there we go. So with this, the TypeScript solution has come to an end, and we're going to jump into the Python solution. Now, for the Python solution, of course, we're going to try to use as many methods, built-in methods as possible. And the Python solution is going to resemble the JavaScript solution a lot. And we're going to start the Python solution by defining our function. This is going to be find longest word or words. It's going to receive a string. Now, what do we want to do here? Well, we need to select our string and split it at the empty spaces. And then we are also going to check and select any word whose length is higher than 0. Now, I want to store this inside of an array so I can iterate over it. But then if I want to convert this into an array, I need to iterate over the individual words as well. So I'm going to say word, which is our loop agent, for word in this splitted string. And this is going to give us a list, which I'm going to store inside of this words. Now, I did a couple of things on one line because we've already talked about the logic. The implementation is just language specific, but the logic is the same. Now, we are going to take a look at the length of the words array or list. And if that's equal to 0, then we want to return a message. We want to say input cannot be empty. Cool. Now, we need to find the maximum length of any specific word within this array of input that we have created so far. So let's find out what the max is. We have this max method, and within the max method, I'm going to pass in this individual word, but this individual word comes from our iteration of this loop of words. So I'm going to say for word in words. Now, this is going to store the biggest or the basically the word that has the maximum length inside of it. I just forgot the for keyword. That's why there was that warning. Now that we have the maximum length, now keep in mind, this is going to be a number. Now, depending on how many words within our words array have the same length as this max length, we want to extract all of that and put it inside of another array. So I'm going to create this longest words array, and I'm going to iterate using my word loop agent. So I'm going to say word for word in words if the length of any word inside of the words array is the same as our max length. So I'm going to say if length of the word is equal to double one here, this is Python, is equal to our max length. Now this list is going to contain all of the longest words, but then let's convert it into a set in order to get rid of all of its duplicates. So I'm going to grab a set. I'm going to pass in our longest words, but then I need to convert the set back to a list as well. Much like the same like we did in JavaScript, just again, the language specifics are different. But we're basically doing the same thing. So we have our unique longest words here. So this is going to be an array, and how do we convert it into a string? We can just call our join method and we can pass in this unique longest words. But then we need to join at some sort of a delimiter, which is going to be comma space. And let's return that as well. And there we go. Now I'm going to select the JavaScript version of the solution, the JavaScript version of the test, not the solution. And let's get rid of all of this. And this is going to be input Let's get rid of these two consts. We have console logs. In JavaScript, in Python, we have print the correct one. And here, because we want to have a formatted string. Now, formatted strings, they basically do the same thing as backticks and template literals do in JavaScript, but their syntax is going to be different. So we don't have these backticks anymore. We just have to surround this with basically, so inside of the string, we have double quotes. So the surrounding quotes, they should be single one. And then you need to pass in the F for formatted string. So single quotes and then F. There we go. So we have input, print. We have a couple of issues there. Let's just move this back and move this one back as well. We don't have this function. The function name is different. So let me pass that in there, and there we go. Very good. Now let's test it individually. This is going to be hello world Pythonistas, and then comment it out. So this is going to be clear Python C tab, enter, and there we go. That's our result. Why do we have this $sign? Oh, that's because it's right here. That's an artifact of JavaScript. Let's run it again. There we go. Now, I want to check Pythonistas. Run this again. There we go. What about the unique words that we got rid of? There we go. We just got bird. We know this will work, but still let's test it. And next up, we have the space, and let's test that as well. We got the number, but what happens if I pass in an empty string? We get input cannot be empty. Let me capitalize the E as well. And the last one, there we go. Input cannot be empty. So that's it for the Python solution. Let's jump into the Go version of this solution. To get started with the Go version of the solution, we are going to first grab our main package, and we're going to define this function, find longest words. This is going to accept a string that is going to have a type of string, and it's going to return a string for us as well. Now, we have this strings library, and on it, we have a method that's called fields. And this fields method, I just imported the strings library as well. This fields method is going to separate our strings into substrings, divided into substrings. And in the process of doing that, it's going to get rid of all of the spaces as well. And it is going to basically convert our string into substrings or consisting words. And it's going to get rid of all the spaces, but it does the separation or the splitting at the white space. And then I'm going to store this inside of this words. And what this gives us is going to be a string slice. Now, once we have this string slice that it doesn't have, and it doesn't have any kind of empty spaces inside of it, we're going to check the length. So we're going to say if the length of words is equal to 0, then we are going to return a message. We're going to say input cannot be empty. There we go. That's our edge case. Let's move forward. We need to find out what is the longest word inside of our input string. So we need to find out the maximum length. So I'm going to define a variable, and I'm going to call it max length using short variable declaration. I'm going to assign its value, its initial value as 0. And then we're going to iterate over our words. But in this iteration, we're not worried about what kind of words there are inside of this input. We just want to find out the maximum length for all the words. And then we're going to get the highest one and store it inside of this max length variable. So I'm going to grab my underscore as well as the word. These are the two things that range gives us. So it's going to give us the value and it's going to give us the index. We don't want to talk about the index. That's not important in this scenario. We just want to talk about the individual items within this list. Now, if the length of any individual item or any word is higher than the max length, higher than the current value of the max length, then we grab our max length and we update it with the length of that specific word. But now I feel like this is a little bit more intuitive than the TypeScript version. In TypeScript, it was like the index that I pass in there and here. But here, this len method, this is I feel like it's a little bit more intuitive. So if the length of the word is higher than the current length of the current number of the max length, then I update the max length with the length of that word. So if the length of the word is 3, we know that 3 is higher than 0. So max length is going to be updated to 3. If that specific word is 5, 5 is higher than 3, which is that current value of max length. And then we update, we basically go inside of this if statement and we update max length to 5. And for our very first test case, that is going to be it. That's because 5 is the maximum one. Now let's move forward. In here, what I would like to do is let's collect all of the words that match the maximum length. So I'm going to say var longest words, and this is going to be a slice of string. I'm going to initialize it, but I'm not going to give it any value. I'm not going to define it. So here again, we're going to end up with this index and the word itself, because now we are actually interested, basically we are interested in that specific word. So range gives us the index and it gives us the specific item in that slice. And what is the slice? Slice is this words. And we say if any of the words within the words array have a length equal to our max length, we want to populate our longest, this should be longest words. We want to populate our longest words list with that. And how do we do it? We basically use this append method where we pass in the array that we want to append to, we pass in the list that we want to, or the slice that we want to append to, and what do we want to append to it. So first, the collection that you want to put an item into, and then the item that you want to put inside. Right? Now that we have selected, we have put everything in there, what we need to do is we need to check for duplicates. Now, unfortunately, in Go, we don't have sets, so we need to manually track duplicates. And we can do it, one way would be with a map. So I'm going to create a variable and I'm going to call it scene. You could call this, I could call it duplicate just to make sure it resembles that of JavaScript, that of TypeScript that we did. So we have this duplicate and I'm going to use my make method to create a map. And this map is going to have, the key type is going to be string. The value type is going to be bool. It's almost the same thing that we did, a Boolean flag that we added inside of TypeScript, much like this. See, it's duplicate. It was a Boolean, and in here it is basically a map. Maps are like dictionaries or objects, and the value for that is, for any key, the value is going to be bool, because we need to check if any of the words is actually a duplicate. And in here, after that, I'm going to create a unique longest, longest words, yeah. And this is going to be a string slice as well, or an array of strings. Now, let's iterate over our longest words. Now, keep in mind, we are no longer concerned about our original words slice. Now we're concerned about longest words slice that we created. We get the word as well as the index. We don't care about the index. We just care about the actual word. So let me grab this longest words. Now, what do I want to do within this loop? Well, I am going to do a conditional, that's for sure. And I'm going to say, if any word is not duplicate, if any specific word is, let me pass in the word here as well. If it is not duplicate, that means, what does that mean? It means it's a unique word. So it's a unique long word. And then I want to add it to my unique longest words slice. But before adding it, I want to make sure to mark it as duplicate and then add it. Because next time when we come across this word, we need to be able to distinguish that we have already added this. So I am going to grab my is duplicate. I'm going to pass in that specific word, and the value for the word is going to be true. Now, you need to pay attention that we have created a map. The map has keys, which are the actual words from our longest words slice. But the map's keys, they need values. Their values are booleans. So for any boolean that we set its value to true, it means it's a duplicate. For any boolean for which the value is false, that means it's not a duplicate. So we only put in something within our unique longest words slice if it is not a duplicate. That's why this if statement says if it is not a duplicate. See that exclamation mark, that not operator? If it is not a duplicate, then we jump inside of this if statement. But if it is a duplicate, if the flag has been set to true for that specific word, then it's a duplicate. We don't go inside of the if statement. And if we don't go inside of the if statement, we do not append anything to this array. And let me pass in that specific word here as well. So again, just one more time, we say if the item is not duplicate, make sure that it is set to true, the duplicacy or duplication, because if it is not duplicate, we put it inside of the unique longest words. And if there is any other word like it, then it is a duplicate. That's why we set the flag to true. Any value, any word that you put inside of this unique array, you need to set its flag to true, because next time you should not put it inside of that unique. And then if you do that, it's not going to be unique. So if you set the flag to true, this if statement is not going to run, and then you're not going to add a duplicate value to this unique array. And in conclusion, you're going to end up with a unique list of words, actually, not arrays. All right. So that's why we change the flag to true. So we avoid re-adding the same item. Cool. So now that we have done this, what do we want to basically return from this function? So let me get out of this if statement right here. From the function, we want to return basically our unique longest words, but then I want to basically convert it to a string. So how do I do that? I need to have a delimiter, which is going to be comma space. And the way I can convert it is I can use this join method, which is available on the strings library. And this is going to basically do the trick for me. Now, let's define the main function, and let me copy paste all of the test cases from Python. Put all of them here, and we're going to get rid of the £sign. Let's just make sure that there is a little bit of indentation. We have this function name, copy it, put it right here. Now, the formatting is going to be a little bit different. So we have this fmt dot, we're going to grab the printf. This is going to be the formatted print. And the way that we're going to format this is going to be a little bit unique, because the output has to have these quotes around them as well. That's why we're going to use this kind of formatting. And the formatted string is going to go like this. So we have the input. There is going to be a colon after the input. I want to add quotes, as I said, around my string, right? So the first quote is here. This is the first quote, and I need to escape it. And I escape it using a backslash. And the second quote is right here. I need to escape that using backslash as well. Then I want to add a new line because the next print statement has to be printed on a new line. And /n is going to add a new line. But where is our string? Where is our input? Well, the input is right between these two quotes. So here is the, let me just show it to you like this. So here is the first quote, here is the second quote, and between these first and two quotes, just don't pay attention to this backslashes. These are nothing just except to escape the quotes. So whatever goes between these two quotes is going to be our formatted string. And that is something we specify or we denote as %s. That's going to be our string placeholder. All right. And then let's select our input and put it right here. So it's going to grab this input's value and put it right where this %s is. And it's going to add a quote before it, a quote after it, and then a new line after it as well. Let me get rid of this. Just copy paste this, and we could say this is output. And let's make sure that there is some spaces there, and comment this one out, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. But we need to select all of these, and we need to say that this is short variable declaration. And I need to add that here as well. So what seems to be the problem? We don't have any input. There we go. Let's run this. Go run D tab, enter. Wait a couple of seconds. And there we go. So we got the input and we got the output. Very good. Let me, this is going to be Golang. Save that. Let's run this again. Let's bring it up. And there we go. Golang is the longest word. It has 6 characters. What about this unique ones? There we go. It works as well. Very well. And the next one. Perfect. The next one. We're just going to do this. Very good. And let's see if our input cannot be empty also works as expected. So the input is an empty string and the output says input cannot be empty. And then even if the user passes several spaces, it's still going to get rid of all of the spaces. And so you're going to see input cannot be empty. So with this, the solution of Go has come to an end. Let's jump into the last and most complicated language of this series. And before doing anything, I'm going to get rid of the terminal. To get started with the Rust solution, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to define this function that is called find longest words. This is going to accept a string, the type of which is going to be a string slice. String slice, not the literal word slice. And what this function is going to return is going to be a string as well. But since we are in Rust, this should be an owned string. So it could be either a string slice or an owned string. Now, what do we want to do first? Well, we need to make sure that we can split our string. So we're going to go step by step. We want to split our string and we want to get rid of all of the white spaces as well. So I'm going to grab the string, and on the string, I have this split underscore white space method. Now, what this method is going to do is it's going to split on any white space character. It's going to split our input string on any white space character. And then in the process, we end up with an iterator of splitted strings. What we need to do next is we need to collect it. The reason that we want to collect it, we want a collection, is to store and iterate over words multiple times. And then what am I going to store this in? I'm going to store this inside of a collection that's called words, but the type of this is going to be a vector of string slices. All right, so there we go. It's a vector of string slices. The reason that it's a vector is because it's easier for us to iterate over and to take a look at individual items of the vector. And after we have done the collection, we have basically splitted the string at the white space, and we have gotten rid of the white space. We need to have our edge case, and the edge case is basically if the words array or the words collection is empty. If it is empty, it means the user has passed an empty string in there. And what do we want to do? We basically want to return input cannot be empty message. And this should have, this should be converted to a string as well. So this is our if statement. So far, everything is cool. The next step is to find the length of all of the characters and to find which one has the maximum number of characters. So I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it max underscore length. And this is going to be an interesting variable. We're going to grab our collection and we're going to call a method on it, which is called iter. Now, iter is going to create an iterator, which is going to iterate over vector elements, and it is going to return references for us. We do this because we need to iterate over words without consuming the vector itself, because we want to use the vector later on as well. And then we're going to call a map method on it, and the map is going to transform each element using some sort of a closure function. Now, throughout this series, we have already seen a couple examples of closure functions, and they are basically like anonymous functions that we pass into something else. You could think, it's not 100% correct, but you could think of them like arrow functions of JavaScript or TypeScript. And then the closure function is going to require a parameter, which you pass in between these pipe characters. That's the syntax. And then we're going to say if the length of the word is, let me go back. So length of the word. Now, what do we want to do? We want to find out which word has the maximum length, right? So we iterate over all of the words. And now what we find is what is the maximum of that. So after this map method using its closure, it has iterated over the words. It's going to have all the individual words from our collection. And once we call the max method, we call it on the map method because we are interested in what the map method produces. And we take a look at what is the maximum number that the map method produced. And then we say unwrap because we want to extract it from the map method. And then we store it within the max length. So the max length is going to have just one number, and that's going to be a maximum number of characters of the longest word inside of our words collection. Now, what do you think what the next step is? Well, we know that which number is the maximum number of characters inside of this collection. So we have this number in mind. For our very first test case, we know that's 5. So let's say we have 5 as the value for our max length. Now, the next step for us is to filter our collection of words, which is words. We filter it out based on this maximum number. So any of the characters that match, that their length, no, I should say it like this. Any of the words within our input string whose length matches our max length, we need to get it outside of the words. Or basically, we could say we could copy it, or in Rust terms, we could clone it. So in here, I'm going to create another collection. I'm going to call it longest underscore words, right? And the type of this is going to be a vector of string slices. Now, let's grab our words and let's convert it into an iterator and let's filter it as well. It's almost like the JavaScript one, aside from the fact that we're converting it into an iterator so we can iterate over it. So we have this filter method, the same thing we had in JavaScript. It accepted, the JavaScript version accepted a arrow function. This accepts a closure function. And we say, okay, every word is a string slice, and we're interested on in the word's length if that's equal to our max length. If it is the same, if any word has the same length as our max length, we want to clone it. So we're going to say cloned, and then we want to collect it into this vector of string slices. I'm doing multiple operations on just one thing, just to show you, okay, how all of this actually works. Now, the next step for us is to actually create our unique longest words collection. And this is going to have, yes, a type of a string slice. So we're going to grab our longest words and we're going to convert it into an iterator, but this time this time we're going to use a different method, which is called into_iter. The reason for this is, this should be an ampersand. So the reason that we're using a different method than before, so before we used the iter, is because we didn't actually consume this vector. Now here we need to consume it because we need to pass on the ownership to something that we're going to use in front of it, and that's a hash map. So if I'm trying to create something that's unique, a collection that's unique, I'm going to use a hash map, and a hash map needs ownership. So here I am going to say collect, but the type of this collect is going to be very interesting. This is going to be a hash set right here. And since I don't want to change the type of the items within this collection, I'm just going to pass in an underscore, which is going to pass through the types. So if it is a known string, it's going to be a known string. If it is a string slice, it's going to be a string slice. Now, we need to import this as well. So I'm going to say use std. We're going to import it from the standard library, and it's available on the collections. And then we have this hash set. So now that we have passed on the ownership to the hash set, let's iterate over the hash set as well. Now, again, why do we want to iterate over it? Because hash set is going to have all the duplicate items removed, but we need to convert the hash set back into a collection so we can iterate over it, back into a vector so we can iterate over it, and we join it so we can convert it into a string again. Okay, because that's what the function returns. The function should return an owned string. So we convert the vector into a hash set, and then we convert it back to a vector, and then we join it. Therefore, we end up with an owned string. So I'm going to say into_iter, and then I'm going to collect it as a vector. So at the end of the day, what this unique longest words contains is actually a collection of string slices. So now that this is done, let me terminate these statements up until here. Very good. Now, what do we want to do next? Well, that's simple. We are going to grab our unique longest words and we're going to join it. And what do we want to join it at? It's going to be comma and space. And that's it. That's what we return from the function. So here we need to have our main function for this program. And let's grab the JS one. I'm going to write this output, the print one, all by myself, but I need these. So let me just put it there. I'm going to get rid of all of these. I'm going to change them with let. This is going to be let as well. Let's add just one tab. Very good. I'm going to comment these ones out. This is going to be hello world rustations. So rustations. The name of the function is find longest words. Let's pass it in there. So how do we want to print this? Well, we have this print line macro, which is going to accept the input, and we need to have our display specifier as well. So this is the display specifier, but then the display specifier should be surrounded by quotes. So here is going to be one quote and another one is going to be here, but then we need to escape these quotes as well. There we go. And let's pass in the input. And the next one is going to be the output. Very good. And let's tab this one as well, this one, and this should be let. Very good. Hopefully there is nothing wrong in here. Let me run this. Rust C E tab, enter. Okay, so let me take a look at this. So it has words, expected one of these string dots. Okay, split white space dot while parsing the type for words. Let me go to the top. So help add comma. Okay, there is the comma. And find longest words string fn. Let me save this. Let me run this again. So let me take a look at our code. I forgot the equality sign. Okay, let's run it again. All right, so expected type. Why am I making all these mistakes? So the equality sign goes after the type, not before the type. Okay, now what seems to be the problem? Oh, I forgot to call this collect. And what else? Collect is not. And use std unused import hash set. It's not unused. Let me just save this and let's run this. Oh, I forgot that one here as well. What else is missing? Into iter. And that should be it, hopefully. And that was it. So let's run this. We got jumps, quick, and brown. Let's clear this. Just some typos. Very good. So for the second one, we need to have rustations, of course. And there we go. We got rustations. For the triple bird, let's see if our hash set actually works. And there we go. Hash set works. And for the next one, let's compile this and then run it. Very good. Let's see about this. That one works as well. And we need to check our messages as well. Input cannot be empty. Very good. And finally, this one, and it should be the same thing. Very good. Input cannot be empty. So this is going to be it for the solution for Rust. This took a little bit longer than our previous entries in this series. And with this, the 10th challenge of this series has come to an end. And from the challenge number 11, we're going to start a different series of challenges. So the way that I'm creating these is I have like a very basic draft of what it is that I want to do, but mostly I don't want to end up with duplicate challenges, but I don't want to overthink it too much as well. I'm doing this just for fun, just to keep practicing programming and just to keep practicing coming up with solutions to different challenges. So I don't do it for anything else. It's fun and it's a challenge and I like challenges and I'm going to do it for as long as I can. But the way that I'm going to go from this point onwards is going to be from the challenge number 11. We're going to talk about a different data structure. So there might be some strings in there, but we're going to try to handle like maybe like a list or array kind of data or slice kind of data structure from the next challenge for like 10 or 15 challenges, not sure. So it depends on how I'm going to go about it, but I'm going to try to keep changing all of these. So far you can see it was always string, 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 but I want to make sure that we talk about different other data structures as well. And that's what I wanted to tell you at the end of this video. So see you in the next one. See you in challenge number 11.